Hi, I'm Charlie Melcher, and I'm the founder of the Future of Storytelling Summit. And I'd like to welcome you to today's Speaker Hangout. Each week we bring back a different speaker from the FoST Summit to join us in a conversation about how technology is transforming the way we tell stories. And this week we're incredibly honored to have with us Todd Yellin, the VP of Product Innovation at Netflix. Hi Todd, welcome.
Hey Charlie, thanks. This is going to be fun.
It's going to be great. I'm so excited to have you here. So I also want to let people who are watching know that they're welcome to join the conversation and to share their questions with us either through our Twitter Hangout, our Twitter hashtag FoST.org, or directly through Google Plus Hangouts. So Todd, 30 minutes. This is going to go so fast because when you and I get together, we can talk for hours. I am so honored to be here with you. So let's start by sharing a little clip of the video we made together for your FoST film, and I think we can ask Luke to help cue that up, and let's just play a little piece of that now to get us rolling.
Great. When I was a kid growing up in New York, I had a whopping 7 channels to choose from: 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, 11, and 13. As I got older, the cable industry came along. And suddenly it went from 7 channels to dozens of channels to hundreds of channels. Now with internet TV, with Netflix, with the explosion of the availability of thousands of titles that you could possibly watch, the world changes.
Choice. The problem is choice.
With all this incredible choice, that's fantastic, but you need a way to sort through the choice. You need to make finding the great title to watch easy. And that's where personalization comes in. So personalization is pretty much creating the right connection between a viewer and their content. In the end, what we're doing is we're creating a love story.
Oh, it's so romantic.
Oh yeah, it's touching my heart.
So Todd, tell us a little bit about what personalization means at Netflix. What's the goal of that, and how have you developed sort of technologies to do that?
So personalization is hugely important to us because at Netflix, as the many people who use Netflix know, or if you don't, we just have thousands of video choices, TV shows and movies that one can choose from, and that could be overwhelming. It's great to have choice, but it also could be a lot of work if you have too much choice and no help to find what you really want. And this can go for movies and TV shows in our case, news stories, books, music, you name it. So in our case, it's important to our business because we really are competing against others for the moment of truth. You can be entertained by a lot of things. We want them to come to Netflix. So to come to Netflix, we want them to, when you pull up the Netflix app, something great should be up on the screen, but that's going to be different for different people. So personalization is bubbling up. It's important to our business because we want them to keep on subscribing and we want to keep on showing them something great to watch. Over the many years we've been doing this, we've honed it, we've gotten better and better, and I would give us a B+ right now because I don't think anyone is in an A. I think it's really challenging to get it right, and there's going to be lots of credibility-busting moments where you see a piece of content. It could be from us, it could be from other great services that use personalization. That's not exactly what they want to do or watch or listen to or whatever, but we've gotten better. And there's a couple of ways we get better. Charlie, you burst in with another question.
Well, I was going to ask, so tell me about how the evolution of how you've been able to use that data to hone better choices or recommendations for people.
Yeah, so the evolution is, early on, we were really big at asking people to rate movies on a 1 to 5 star scale. We thought that's the best way to do it because if they tell you what they like, they love this, they'll give it 5 stars. They hate this, they'll give it 1 star. We can really cluster together that data, find other users like them, and based on that, just predict how many stars they'll give a certain title, and thus they can pick that way. What we learned is that people aren't honest. Not that they lie to others, they lie more to themselves. What they're giving 5 stars isn't really what they want to watch night in and night out. So it's better, instead, what's evolved is we still lean a little bit on what explicitly they tell us, but we rely much more heavily in what they do, what they tend to watch, and how much of it they watch.
So the real data is what choices someone's made in the past, right? And I guess what I find so interesting about that is it sort of debunks a little bit some of the standard wisdom about demographic knowledge. I mean, I remember It used to be, if they would say in marketing, if you knew somebody's zip code, you would know exactly who they are, what they wanted to watch, or what they liked. Or if you knew that they were an 86-year-old, grandmother in Florida, you knew what she was going to want to be all about and watch. But that turns out not to be true. Is that right?
First thing I did, I started off as a product manager at Netflix almost a decade ago, and the first thing I did was like, if I'm going to personalize great, I need to know how old you are, and I need to know your gender, because that seems obvious. But after a couple of years, and we got really good at collecting that data, almost everyone gave it, and they were mostly honest about it. And how I knew they were mostly honest is because we asked it at sign up, and we asked it right around the credit card. And while they're giving the credit card, they think that's part of like giving the credit card and the information. This is earlier days of internet, 10 years ago. So they would tend to give us accurate information. But even with that accurate information, it was kind of weak. Because back then we were in the DVD world, and you order a couple of DVD titles, and we have a much better idea. Because yes, as you said, that 86-year-old woman in Florida, if she ends up watching something like a Marvel superhero title, and she doesn't go down the cliched route of watching Golden Girls, then and which is many times the case, we know a lot more about her, and we're not making stereotypical judgments about her taste. And now it's even more powerful with streaming when it's just a click and play, and it's a lot faster than DVDs going through the mail, so we can get a much faster signal.
Okay, so you've learned to rely on this implicit data to make better decisions, or sort of move through all that big data in a way that is better at predicting. Now, what's the evolution of that? Right? I understand one piece of it is that people will watch more things that they're happy watching, but does that start to actually roll over into the decisions you make as to which films to buy or which TV shows to actually invest in, as you've done such amazing, with House of Cards and Orange is the New Black? You guys are killing it in terms of programming. Is that because you have this big data that you can apply to it?
So let me make a clarification about big data, and then I'll answer your question, Charlie, about like how much is it informing or not informing our content choices about what we're producing and licensing. So big data, don't overrate big data because it takes a lot of work. And big data is a mountain of crap. It is like all this data, and then in that mountain of crap, there's this gold. But you have to burrow through the grotesqueness of going through that mountain of crap, and which takes a lot of work, a lot of sweat, because you're going to be flooded with all this data about users. And this isn't only Netflix. This is a common problem in Silicon Valley. This is keeping a lot of people employed around where I live, which is finding out where's the gold in there, what's going to be really useful. So when it comes to suggesting stuff to people, we know all this information about what they watch, the velocity of what they watch a TV show. Are they watching 2 episodes a night, or they're watching an episode a week? We know how recently they watched it. How important is it the content you watched yesterday, and how much more should we weight it, or should we weight it the same as what you watched 6 months ago? Or the time of day you watch it, or the different device you watched it on. We have all this data that even a lot more than that, and I could keep on going. But what is really valuable, and we can all take our guesses, and we used to take the guesses like you were alluding to before about age and gender, and as I was saying, that's really, really weak, not even worth collecting from our perspective. So it's not that. So you got to find it. And the same now, you're going after a different problem that you're suggesting, which is, well, how much can we go burrow into? I'm going to stop using that metaphor. Let's call it a mountain of rubbish instead, because it's just not as grotesque in your mind. So going through that mountain of garbage, mountain of rubbish, and finding out where's the gold buried in there, if you're going to do that in terms of choosing what content to produce and license, well, that's even more nascent. If I'd give ourselves a B+ in leveraging the data to put the right content in front of the right person in the right time, which means we still have a long way to go, I'd give ourselves a far worse grade at being able to leverage the data to really select and produce content. We're a lot more relying on, the traditional, we have super smart people at Netflix who are really skilled at this. They are using that data, but, whereas it may be in traditional Hollywood, the data they're using maybe 10 or 20% of the time. Maybe we're using it 30 or 40% of the time. But the majority of the decisions are still based on the golden gut. We're just moving, informing that more and more, getting smarter more and more. So we are leveraging that more, but we still have a lot more gold to find.
Okay, so algorithms aren't choosing our films yet, or our TV shows, which is good. Let's talk a little bit about how it impacts the medium itself. If you're coming from a perspective of a storyteller, I mean, here we've just gotten a question in from Twitter. You know, is video content going to continue to get shorter? Is the 2-hour movie over? Is some of that being influenced by the way people can access content on Netflix?
So, great question, and I don't think so at all. I think what it does is, in the age of internet TV, it gives a real opportunity for short content to thrive. Super short content nowadays, you know, it's insane. 6-second content. I'm sure you'll have another guest on this very same cast, and you'll have them talking about, you know, vines and all that stuff, which, you know, blows my mind. I can understand a short movie, 3 to 4 minutes, but I don't think it at all makes extinct the 2-hour movie, because, you know, first off, let's start with trends and let's go into philosophy. The trends are TV is becoming much more, TV shows, TV series are becoming much more under the control of the viewer. So the obvious thing that now, you know, it's funny how 2 years ago when we released our House of Cards, when we released all episodes at once, it was like, oh, the buzz of TV are crazy, they're insane, they're taking away the water cooler, what the heck are they doing? And now it's like passé, you shrug, and it's like, we do it, and we led the way, and now Amazon Prime is doing it, and then you'll see other places doing it, and okay, releasing all episodes at once is one thing. But what it's done is it's led to a golden age of storytelling, because now that when you release it not as single installments, you know, that are 45 minutes long with 15 minutes of commercials every week, but you're releasing, you know, 10, 13 hours, whatever the storyteller wants to do per year, and in their 10 or 13 hours, they create an arc, and you watch as much of that arc or as little each night. You could watch, if, you know, a few minutes at a time if you happen to be on your phone, and then you get home, you want to relax over a longer period of time. We don't want to watch our entertainment and have to keep on making choices of, I'm going to watch this 6 seconds, and I'm going to watch this 6 seconds, and I'm going to watch this six seconds. That's a lot of choices to make, of a lot of content to find. You want to find one horse that you want to ride that's telling you, you know, and a horse, I mean a storyteller, you're enjoying their story, and you can get immersed in that for, it could be half hour, but more likely it could be many hours of diving deep into certain characters and their worlds. So I don't think at all it's the end.
Yeah, I mean, certainly I know different creators now who start to talk about the opportunity in television to create 12, 24-hour stories instead of 2-hour stories. So one could argue it's actually opening up the possibility for much longer forms, obviously episodic, told in serial. So let's talk about another topic. So discoverability. And does the Netflix having this incredible and unlimited library space enable for a flowering of indie filmmaking? I mean, we have another question that's come in again from Twitter. Will indie creators be able to release directly through Netflix? Are you guys going to allow for many more voices to find an audience?
Yeah. So Netflix, obviously we're very different than YouTube. YouTube is an open platform where people can post videos and they can make them as public as they want. Netflix is a very large catalog, but it's a very curated catalog. So we are, constantly doing the traditional stuff of going to the film festivals. We're talking to a lot of indie filmmakers. We have a real strength in documentaries. We have a nomination this year we're super proud of for Virunga for Best Documentary. So we are opening up. More people will watch Virunga than we're ever able to watch it historically. We're the best platform for documentaries and indie films and other indie films that are more narrative, because people can now watch them. My own movie is on Netflix. It's a small indie film that was in Tribeca many years ago before I started at Netflix. It's on Netflix. I have so many more people watching that thing, this small movie I made, than ever would have watched it. So we have opened up audiences for independent film that we haven't before.
Your best short film is the one we did with you for FoST, which is only about 5 minutes long. And I really recommend people to watch it because it's one of my favorites. And I'm just giving a little plug that they should go to FoST.org and watch your video. Or perhaps we can get that up on Netflix at some point.
There we go. So Charlie makes a great pitch for FoST, which I'm a big fan and supporter and now participant of. So yes, Charlie, I will go with that. You have to understand your audience and then go with that audience. Absolutely.
So anyway, I appreciate your answering the question about indie film. So let me ask you another question. I know that I've read recently that Netflix is making a real effort to expand to be a global brand. Can you talk a little bit about the motivation there and what's happening?
Yeah, this becoming, many years ago, you might have heard the quote, the Marshall McLuhan Global Village quote, and the man was ahead of his time because, as we all know, it's the internet that really laid down the foundation of becoming a more global village in communication. And Netflix, like I said, we're very curated content around great TV shows and movies and a huge variety of those. And so the ability to globally distribute all at once at the same time is huge for us. So right now we're in around 60 countries, and we're all in the Americas, North and South America. We're in most of Europe, and now we're looking towards we're going to launch in Japan later this year. We're going to launch in Australia next month. We're going to launch in more countries. So within the next couple of years, we'll be in every country, give or take. You can use your imagination to imagine the couple of countries we won't be in, but almost everything else you'll get Netflix. And with that, when the previous person who asked the question about distribution of independent films and the audience, it gives us the ability to monetize and thus distribute and thus get an audience for titles in a much broader way. So we can buy a title and we can do the best we can of getting an audience all around the world. And what that does in a strange way in terms of global taste is it starts pulling people together about the kinds of things they have access to.
I mean, I'm personally fascinated by this. I don't know if I ever told you, but my background is in book publishing. And when I was a young buck starting out, I got to go to the Frankfurt Book Fair. And I thought, oh, this is going to be so great. I'm going to see books from all over the world and be able to bring them back to my country. No way. All we did was sell. Every one of our books went all over the world. We never bought anything. And it was a great example of kind of American cultural imperialism. And ever since the internet, I keep hoping that this promise of storytelling and unique voices from all sorts of corners of the globe that haven't gotten to surface up to a bigger audience will finally get their day. And do you think that's going to happen? Is Netflix going to have a role in that?
It's already happening. So our toe in the water was this little tiny show called Lilyhammer that's done really well on Netflix. We have one American in it from Bruce Springsteen's E Street Band, Stevie Van Zandt. And most of the show is in Norwegian, and it's shot in Norway, and then he speaks English. He's the fish out of water story. Now, that was the first step. We have multiple steps. So we're producing right now with local talent in France. There's a great filmmaking tradition in France. We're creating a TV show, and once again, that's a TV show not in the traditional sense, a 10 or 13-hour arc that hopefully will have multiple years, and we can keep on telling different stories with that same milieu, within that same milieu. So we're doing something called Marseille, which is all the corruption in that city and the darkness, and it's in French, and it's going to be distributed around the world. And we're doing another show that's coming out even sooner called Narcos, which is a great Brazilian director, Jose Padilla, who is shooting a part in English, part in Spanish, equal about the drug trade in South America 20 years ago. Lots of action, lots of excitement, lots of politics. So we're already doing that, and all these things get instantly distributed around the world.
That's amazing. So here's a question that's come in from another person joining us, who I hope I'm going to pronounce his name correctly, Fabio A. Tipo or A. Twop. Sorry if I'm butchering that. And he asks us, what is the future of Netflix? What will it be in 5 years?
So we've already headed in that direction. We'll mention a few future things that will happen. So in 5 years, we'll be global, and we'll be global for a much longer time, and we'll have a bigger audience base. So these kinds of international productions I'm mentioning, you'll see a lot more of those. You'll see a lot more originals. You'll see personalization. We're going to eke our way from a B+ to an A- within 5 years. We'll get even smarter, putting the right content in front of the right people at the right time. And then from a user interface perspective, as bandwidth gets better, as devices get better, we'll be able to do things like, we'll see more and more second screen, controlling your TV with your phone, so you don't have to have that remote that you can't find in the couch cushions. Some people are using it now, but they're the early adopter power users. In 5 years, you'll see a lot more. And we're hoping, and this is a bet, I don't know how well it's going to go, but I'm somewhat bullish, and we're experimenting with voice. So forget about having a TV remote. Tell your TV what to do, and it will do it, and it will find something great for you to watch.
Okay, so another question that's come in off of Twitter, which is a good one, and I think it has to do with the basic model for television as we move forward. Are we going to be leaving the more traditional TV model and moving towards one where it's subscription-based, like Netflix and Amazon Prime or HBO? What do you think about that?
Yeah, so HBO made an announcement that they're going to unbundle their service, so you don't have to get it just strictly as part of a big cable bundle. It's still up in the air how many people go for that, what the pricing is going to be, and so forth. So we're wondering, the whole world is wondering. There's a lot more subscription going on. We're proud to be, we were early on kind of pushing that, pioneering in that way, and now a lot more services are going to become more user choice, more unbundled, and so forth. But traditional linear TV is fantastic for things that Netflix really doesn't have any ambitions around, which is live TV, stuff that you can get right now. That's exactly what it does best. So something like news or sports or reality competition shows where you want to be right in on it right now, those are very different. And so we do longer shelf life stories, both real and most fictional.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So I'm a big believer in that also, using each medium to sort of do what it does best.
Right, exactly.
So storytelling, some people say, is going through a little bit of a renaissance right now, partially due to the great storytelling that's happening through Netflix and other TV channels, some through things like radio. There's a great renaissance right now in radio storytelling. Yeah. Do you agree, and do you see some cause to this? Why are we having all these great stories now?
It's just it's part of being in the internet age of, once again, all great choice and people's voices being able to be heard that wouldn't have been able to be heard. In my universe, as I said at the beginning of that clip you showed, Charlie and I, we were born into that world of just a few channels and a few choices. That old get the dust off of that situation. So now that dust is off, and now it's not just a few choices, it's many choices. And with many choices, you can hear many voices, and many voices can find their audience. I think that's part of the renaissance of storytelling. Let me add one more thing to that, which I'll take any opportunity to proselytize, which is, in the world of movies and TV shows, and this is, I had a traditional film school education at USC many years ago. If you look at my shelf, I used to write screenplays. I have all those screenwriting books that everyone in LA who's writing screenplays, which is a huge percentage, have on their shelves. And these things are very much written for the old world and not the new opportunity of how you could write things and how you can tell stories. So as formats change, and you mentioned some worlds that are close cousins of ours, whether it's audio and radio and what's going on there, whether it's super short form like the YouTube or the Vine or whatever it is. These kinds of formats, throw those books in the garbage. We're back to garbage as our metaphor. Throw those books in the garbage, and it gives the ability now for people to tell stories of a different structure. And that's true with Netflix. When you have 13 hours without commercials, and your structure doesn't have to have 45 minutes an episode, or you have 9 hours, or we'll give you 2 hours if you have a great story, and that's what it requires. Break the boundaries of how you've been pictured telling stories, Hollywood, and everyone who's writing screenplays and teleplays, and do it. Leverage the format to do it in a different way.
I also think that you guys and others have done a great job of supporting the creative talent, sort of understanding the vision that's there. I mean, I think, honestly, HBO deserves some of the credit for really pioneering in understanding how to support the talent and let them tell the stories they want to tell and not over-analyze or mess with it. But you and HBO and Amazon and some of this explosion of great storytelling, I think, has to be attributed to appreciating the quality of the creator and the storyteller and supporting them.
Yeah, so I give a ton of credit to my partners in our content office, who are forming great relationships with these creators of shows and movies, and pretty much, whether it's Jose Padilla, who I mentioned before, whether it's Baz Luhrmann, who we're doing a new show with, whether it's the Wachowskis, who did Matrix, we're giving them a show that's coming out soon. I'm not all just about promoting our shows, I promise. This is really answering your question. But going to HBO pioneered this, with The Sopranos and David Chase, and giving him a voice to tell something fantastic and tell a story the way you want it to be done. I would like to think, and I think this is more and more the way, we're getting some of the best storytellers coming through our doors first because they realize we're even more of the opportunity now to reach a greater audience, and we are giving a lot of freedom and creating a great creative environment.
So that's almost a great place for us to stop. But I'm going to, since we have just a couple more minutes, I'm going to end it on a question about the future. Are you guys looking at some of these new technologies like virtual reality? Do you think that that's something that might end up being part of the Netflix offerings at some point?
So I'll give a plug for the FoST conference. When I was at FoST, you guys had Oculus Rift, and I was seeing the latest short movies they're making in Oculus Rift. And it is mind-blowing, and they've really gotten the technology better. When I've tried some versions of virtual reality, I won't mention the names of companies, I've actually done it because they were early on, and it's like, wow, this looks pretty cool, and then within 30 seconds, I get violently ill. And first I thought it was something I ate, but then I asked some colleagues and other people. So virtual reality there's some technical difficulties when there's any lag between what you're actually experiencing, what you think you're experiencing, and how your head's moving. And if it doesn't match exactly, it's very disorienting, and you don't even realize it's disorienting, and you just feel a sense of nausea. So let's get past the nausea, and let's get into how you can tell stories in a virtual reality world. Right now, we're watching from a very respectful distance, and I'm following virtual reality closely, as are other people at Netflix. We haven't jumped into that ring yet. We want to make sure it doesn't go the way of 3D filmmaking and storytelling, which was a novelty act in the 50s, a novelty act recently. You'll notice how a lot of TV manufacturers were playing this up huge at places like CES a few years ago, and then they just get slowly quieter about it. You don't see those 3D labels on your TV when you walk into your electronics store. We want to make sure virtual reality isn't that fad, and it really is a great way to tell stories. So I have a guarded optimism about the future of things like virtual reality. I think it has potential. I have great ideas, I think, of where it can go, but let's find out.
Thank you. Well, that's sort of the time we have today, as I knew this would go super fast. Todd, I just want to say that if there was ever anyone that I would trust to help figure out how to recommend movies or TV shows to me that I will enjoy, it's you. So please keep up the great work you're doing at Netflix. Thank you for spending the time with us today and for being part of the future of storytelling. And just can't wait for our next conversation.
Honor to talk to you, Charlie. Always fun. Take care.
Thank you. Have a good day.